this morning. As we continue our series, we want to examine the role of the mother and the wife and the home. And as I alluded to in our last week's message, the fact that we cannot talk about the wife without mentioning the husband, or the husband without the wife, and as a result, we are going to be making references to either couple as we go along this message here. But today we are going to be looking especially at some numbers that we reflected on last week. We'll reflect on specifically women this week, and we're going to be looking at single mothers and single parent homes with mothers as a sole breadwinner. In other words, there is no man in the home. I bring you to the 2010 U.S. Census Bureau statistics that says that there were 79 million families in America. Now, out of those 79 million families, we had 58 million married couple households. It means there was a difference of 21 million families that were not married. Out of that, 6 million male households, in other words, without a wife, and we had 15 million female households without a man, without a husband. And that's the focus of this statistic here. But what we want to see here is that 9 million is a difference between those that have just males in the home as a sole breadwinner and those that are females as a sole breadwinner here. 9 million mothers, more than fathers, are playing the role of husband, mother, instead of wife. Church, we have a situation in our society today that women are the core and the crux of our households. And we have to realize the power that women have in the household for us to understand the relationship that God expected of us as Christians to have in the home. So today we examine God's plan to bring to the relationship between a man and his wife in the home a role that is uniquely designed for companionship, for unity, for equality, and for mutual success. We learned in the previous verses of Genesis 2 that despite all the creatures created to keep Adam company, there wasn't any that was created to help him cope or accomplish his purpose except the woman. And we see this in the passage, Genesis 2:21 through 23, as we read as our theme passage, that he was taken out of man and woman was created. And he said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man." This is indicative of the fact that there is no difference in relationship, but it is one and whole together. I premise this message by mentioning that the home is intended to be a relationship between a husband and a wife together in equality to succeed at the purpose that God has established for them. But we see the woman has now become a support system, a support structure, and a counselor to the man because there was no help meet for the man. God decided to make a woman. The woman has now become one to relate with, just as the man relates with God. The man can now discuss the cares and concerns he has with someone he can practically relate to. But how will the woman be represented in the home before God? Biblical history has shown women in different capacities. As queens over tribes, as wives of prominent men of God in the scriptures like Sarah with Abraham. As righteous wife and mother, Hannah dedicated her son Samuel to the Lord. As the loyal fiancée Mary, the mother of Jesus who nurtured her son. And there are countless others. Mary, Martha, and the list goes on. These all played specific roles within a home, whether they were married or not. This morning, if you are a woman saying, well, I am not married, there's nothing here for me. I submit to you this morning to think and think again, because there's countless people in our scriptures that show they were not married, but they had an impact on married lives. They had an impact on ministry. They had an impact on society. They had an impact in the world because of their faithfulness to God. I encourage you to be faithful as a single woman before God blesses you if He so chooses or you so desire into marriage. We see how God used Esther to save the nation. We see how He used Deborah to judge a people, and we see how Rahab was used to protect the spies. All these women supported or helped a man in one way or the other, indirectly or directly, be successful. There was mutual benefit either in a home or in a nation or in a community because of the presence of a woman. But today, let's consider our efforts and our thoughts on the relationship between a man and his wife in the home. Let's see how passages in Scripture reveal how this relationship, according to God's standard, was intended to be. We see how Genesis 3 verse 17 reveals how it says, and unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. This is the woman that God presented unto Adam to be a helpmeet for him, to support him. We see the power of the woman in this passage. The wife is seen here as a counselor, the co-decision maker in the home. This is evident of how Adam hearkened to the voice of his wife's counsel to eat of the fruit of knowledge. It tells you the power of the relationship within the home that should never be taken for granted. And following that instance, we see how the wife has brought the husband honor by childbirth in the case of Adam and Eve, Abraham and Sarai, Isaac and Rebekah. showing the lineage of tribes of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. So how does one find a wife that is a help meet for him? I've often heard stories in the church where one comes to the pastor and says, "Pastor, I got a revelation that so-and-so over there is supposed to be my wife." Really, my brother? That's quite an interesting revelation there, because God did not reveal that to the man of God. Why don't you go back and think again, pray about it, and see what God is really telling you. You see, the desire for a wife is a good thing, but it requires prayer for God to make sure that your mind is not twisted in another direction. Another might say, "I saw in a dream God showing me that she was going to be my wife," even though she's already married. These things happen in the church across different societies and communities of the Christian faith. So do we look in the church for a wife? Do we look for a wife at work? What is it? Is there someone God has created purposely for you and will be delivered to you like was delivered to Adam? Will you receive a vision or a sign from God that someone is going to be your wife? Maybe so. But these are the questions that have been raised in the church that need biblical responses and reflection. You see, once we understand firstly where we find a wife, where the wife's role is in relation to her husband and how she's betrothed to her husband, and then how she complements their union, we will understand the value of her substance within the home, and then we can learn how, together with her husband, they form a mutual purpose to glorify God. I'm reminded of Proverbs 18, verse 22. It says, "Whoso findeth a wife findeth a good thing, and obtaineth favor of the Lord." The passage tells us two things. First, it says a wife is to be sought after. You've got to look for a wife if you are a man. And a wife, in this case talking to the woman here, the woman must avail herself to be sought after. A man should look for it, and it's not going to be delivered on a silver platter. And it goes both ways. Secondly, it also says it is always a good thing when one finds one, because God will bless it. Now, depending on what culture you come from, finding a wife is a long process of courtship, and one that culminates in a ceremonial event that brings both families from different worlds together into one world with union before God. The role that she plays in the home was to be evident in the visits and the communications with the family of the man to determine whether she would be a good suit for the man. In other cultures, there are processes, and in our American culture, just got to find one and say, hey, this is it. Unless America being what it is, a melting pot of all kinds of cultures, you have one that you particularly follow after. But women are not only a support in the home, but also in ministry. We see Phoebe, a faithful minister that the scriptures calls the servant of the church. We see Priscilla alongside her husband Aquila in ministry. So you see, church, it is perfect design of God to have the role of a woman, not just in the home, but in the church. And when we define the purpose of the woman in the home, we can understand how she impacts the church. Without understanding the power that she has in the home, we can hardly understand the impact she has in her community. Culture changes how women are viewed in the home or in a relationship of marriage or in a community. The ladies tend to render services to pastors, wives, and families in my culture, the African Ghanaian culture. So relationships are created, and we see suitors are seen developing within the homes where we have men and women who have relationships with their pastors, and you tend to see how relationships are being created, and you can already tell how that's going to shape out over the course of time. And the kind of wife one will eventually become is already known based on how she helps and supports the home, evident in the pastor's wife and the pastor's home. We tend to see those things before they manifest. But this morning, we want to focus on her value as a co-laborer in the scriptures. I'm reminded in Proverbs 19, verse 14, that house and riches are the inheritance of fathers, and a prudent wife is from the Lord. A prudent wife is from the Lord, which tells me that there are wives that are not prudent, which means that it is not of God. So what kind of wife should one be? In the American culture today, the relationship between a man and a woman does not necessarily call for what roles they will play in the home or what the wife would do, except what works for both of them. However, the scriptures always have to be the source of any counsel with regard to how she complements her husband in the home. In the scriptures, you will not find clear roles defined of what a woman is in the home or did in the home, except the nurturing of children and keeping of the home. So this is a standard by which, as Christians, we see in the scriptures. It should always start with the authority of leadership within the home, so that it is clear what God expects from a family of God. The husband as a head of the wife, as the head of the husband is Christ. But let's understand that this co-laborer relationship is clear within the home, where the woman is the center of the home. We see this in Psalms 128, verse 3, how it says, "Thy wife shall be as fruitful as a fruitful vine by the sides of thine house. Talking about the relationship in the home. And thy children, both the husband and the wife, thy children, like olive plants around about thy table. She is the center of the home and the well of life of the family. But let's see how Paul establishes the relationship of the man and the wife in the home, as we see in Ephesians 5, verse 23 and 24. It says, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. Now that tends to create some rift in some homes, because the last word, everything, doesn't seem to be clear in the minds of the couple, and somehow there's rift and there's tension and there's torture and there's all kinds of discontent within the home. Yet we forget that the source of our answers is in the scriptures. Having this understanding clearly defines the leadership roles and the responsibility that must occur within the home. So that whenever you run into any problems where there is a misunderstanding of accountability or responsibility for the success and for the growth and the well-being of the home, it is pretty clear who needs to lead. Clearly, once authority is established in the home, then the roles where help can be solicited by either party is clear, and then everybody lives in harmony with each other. But this passage we're about to read here has created some confusion and some discontent in homes, and I submit to you this morning that you consider the context of this passage, Colossians chapter 3, verse 18. And it says, wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands, as it is fit in the Lord. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands. Now, I see and I hear of situations where wives are put into subjection and subduction by their wives, by their husbands, because they say, well, you see what this passage says, you submit to me. You're supposed to submit to me. Now, you do as I say and not as I do. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not what our passage is intended to do. Paul's admonishment to wives to ensure their loyalty to their husbands is to make it clear that the submission reference is not for subjection or subduction or subservience of any sort at all, but rather submission to the responsibility and accountability that comes with the role in the home when you co-labor with someone. You are of equal status and rank, but there is a clear distinction of who needs to be accountable for what. Remember that Eve was taken out of man, and he said, this is now bones of my bones and flesh of my flesh. There's equality there. There's no difference between who you are, Adam, and who Eve is. It's the same thing in the home. And I liken this relationship to my Navy background of how the executive officer and the commanding officer of a United States destroyer ship, for instance, where they are both of equal rank. Commander. They are both commanders, yet one calls the other sir or captain because he or she acknowledges his or her relationship to the commanding officers as a role of an executive officer. This is so that there are checks and balances in the relationship of both who are of equal rank. It's the same mindset that we have in the home as God has established it. But here's a kicker. Ephesians 5 verse 33. Nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife even as himself. It goes back to what Adam and Eve's creation was all about. There is no distinction. Does a man ever hate himself? Love his wife even as himself. And this part here for the wife. And the wife see that she reverence her husband. Ladies and gentlemen, this part seems to create a lot of confusion and contention in the home. And this morning, I want to encourage you, my beloved sisters in Christ, wives of husbands in the church, that when we understand the essence of this passage, we begin to understand the fact that the reverence of the husband is not because that you're worshiping the husband. It is because God expects of you as a wife to understand your relationship and honor to the husband as you honor Christ. That she reverence her husband. The reverence of the husband here is a directive to ensure that the wife understands her husband as Lord of the home. And reverence means to honor, to pay respect. And we recognize that by action. That is why some cultures tend to create an environment where it appears that the woman is in subjection and subduction to the husband, and that is because of the twistedness of the misunderstanding of what the roles of the wife is supposed to be in the home. The reverence of the husband is a directive to ensure that the wife understands this clearly. The arguments, the nagging, and the undue attitudes that stems from the home that puts the husband on defensive. And now he becomes antagonistic because the wife may have misunderstood what it is that she's supposed to do with her husband, and the husband has misunderstood his role and is in subjection to the wife. This relationship must be clearly understood. Honor and reverence the husband. This defensiveness in the home is not reverence. It is dishonor. It is contention, arguments, strife in the home because the wife does not understand the role as much as the husband sometimes misunderstands how to relate with his wife. Give honor to whom honor is due. So with the authority and relationship established in the home, let's see where the wife effectively helps bring honor to the home. I submit to you this morning, wives and sisters of the church, that when you understand this passage we're about to read, you understand what God expects of us, women, wives, to be. Single women, Previously married women, wives, the home. If we understand this passage clearly, we begin to see what God expects our homes to be like. And I bring you to the passage in Proverbs chapter 31, verse 10 through 28. It says, "Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far, far above rubies." There is no price. In verse 11 it says, "The heart of a husband does safely trust in her." Verse 12 it says, "She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life." This tells me that the wife will be faithful to the husband. Verse 13 says, "She seeketh wool and flax. She worketh willingly with her hands." She is not compelled to go out and find work. She does so willingly because the relationship is understood that it is a responsibility of the husband to provide for the wife. Verse 14 says that she is like the merchant's ships. She bringeth her food from afar. Verse 15 says, "She rises also while it is yet night for her household." Yes, I've seen many a time where the woman is up and about to take care of the kids, to bring suck to the child, to get something for the husband. Day in and day out, she rises also while it is yet night. Verse 16 says that she considers the fruit of her hands. 17 says she girdeth her loins with strength. They are so resilient. The women are so resilient. That's what the passage is talking about. They are ready to get up and get out and be about their father's business in support of the home. Verse 18, her merchandise is good. And husbands understand what that passage refers to, because a candle goeth not out by night. Verse 19 says she layeth her hands to the spindle. She's working. She's creating clothing. Verse 20, her hand is out to the poor, the needy are taken care of. Verse 21, she's not afraid of the snow for her household. She takes care of them, clothes them. These are roles of the wife in the home. She maketh herself coverings of tapestry. Her husband is known in the gates. Why is that? Because of her. Her husband is known in the gates because she brings honor to the husband. We've heard the saying that there is no, or behind every successful man is a woman. Show me a man who is successful runabout, where he doesn't have a strong, faithful, virtuous woman behind him. She maketh fine linen and sell it. She sells it. She sells it because she's trying to make something. She doesn't depend solely on the support and provision of the husband. She is being fruitful, as the scripture says. And she's multiplying her talents and her gifts so that others may be blessed by what she has to offer. This is the role of the wife in the home. A virtuous woman. This is what we are talking about. She maketh fine linen and selleth it. Strength and honor are her clothing. Strength and honor are her clothing. She puts that on. She's all about strength and honor. For who? That's right. For the husband. For the home. For Christ. Strength to the man. Honor to the man. Strength to the community. Honor to the community. The power of the wife and the woman in the home. Verse 26, she opened her mouth with wisdom. Wisdom. Her mouth with wisdom, church. That's the power of the woman. Therefore, if you're a woman, a wife, and you bring dishonor to your husband because you are not speaking good things towards him, or you are nagging, or you're having issues, and the Bible does not like nagging or somebody that is not supportive in a way that God expects of you. Bring wisdom, give counsel, sound counsel to the husband so that together he can be fruitful and successful as a couple, so the world will see what kind of couple you are and bring honor to Jesus Christ because of your lifestyle together. Sound counsel, wisdom, the role of the woman. We saw the counsel that we saw with Eve and Adam resulted in that. But I tell you that everything that God does is for a purpose. She opened her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is a law of kindness. She looketh well to the ways of her household. She looketh well to the ways of her household. The role of the wife in the home is to make well her household. If you have a home and the wife is not well, the household is not well. And eateth not the bread of idleness. You won't find a wife that is a wife indeed, or a mother that is a mother indeed, that is idle in her home. And verse 28, her children arise up and call her blessed, and her husband also praiseth her. Church, this is what we talk about when we talk about the roles and the purpose and the power of the woman in the home. Because once we understand this, we understand what the rest of our relationship with our husband and the church and the community is all about. Again, the God's standard of what a woman of virtue to the husband ought to be is what we just unraveled. And this morning I submit to you to understand that the roles of the wife are in each of those verses. And if we understand that passage clearly, we understand how the roles can be effectively realized in the home. We saw in Genesis 3 verse 6 how the woman saw the tree that was good for food and that she offered to the husband. We see the first instance of providing to the husband or to the home what meal that the husband should eat. And she does this to sustain and honor the husband. This trust and favor that the husband has for the wife is essential for the success of a home. This trust and favor that we saw in this passage is what led Samson and Delilah's deception that led to his downfall. So it is important for us to understand that the influence you have, wives, on your husbands is critical. It's essential, because what you do dictates how he comes out to be. Delilah deceived Samson, and it led to his demise. This morning, church, I bring you to Proverbs 31, verse 27. It says, she looketh well to the ways of her household, and eateth not the bread of idleness. This is the case of an observant and careful helper who does not sit idly, expecting the husband to do it all and providing for the home. She voluntarily works with her hands and supports her husband in a career. Growing up, I saw my mother, who desired to work because she wanted to. She was not obliged to do that. My dad had abundance to provide for the home, but she was willing to work. She would go out and she would buy food and carry it on her arms and walk several miles because of the lack of public transportation in where we lived. Because my dad was too busy to provide a ride to the home, but she would toil in the heat of the sun and bring food and lay on the table. She did that willingly. This is the kind of roles we talk about in the home. Proverbs 14 verse 1 tells us that every wise woman buildeth her house, but the foolish plucketh it down with with her hands. So what kind of relationship do you have with your husband? You know, honey-do lists are real. When the wife says, I need you to do this, husband, you turn to it. Remember, she's supporting you, helping you. So together you can be successful. Without her in the home, there's disparity. She will cook. She will tidy up, prepare the rooms for guests, feed the family, take care of the kids, put them to bed. The list goes on. The wise wife takes care of the home in all aspects and creates a welcoming and a hospitable place to make livable, acceptable, and lovable. If the husband has gone to work all day and earning a living, guess what? It's acceptable for him to come home to a home that is. It is not acceptable for him to come home to a home that is untidy, unclean, unwelcoming, or unpresentable. If she's home with or without kids, the atmosphere is not only reflective negatively on her, it reflects negatively on the household and the husband. But if they both work and are gone, then their roles as they choose is different. The responsibility of the aforementioned still rests with the wife because she is the caretaker. She is the one responsible for the home to create the atmosphere. With support from the husband, the responsibility then is that they both have to ensure that the home is ready and acceptable. As the wife seeks to build favor, we see that in 1 Peter 3, verse 1 through 7. It says, likewise, ye wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, they also may without the word be won by the conversation of the wives, while they behold your chaste conversation with fear. Whose adorning let it not be that outward adorning of plaiting the hair and the wearing of gold and of putting on of apparel, but let it be the hidden man of the heart, in that which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price. For after this manner, in the old time, the holy women also, who trusted in God, adorned themselves, being in subjection unto their own husbands. Even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. A plug-in to the wives, calling your husbands Lord, whose daughters ye are also, as long as you do well and are not afraid with any amazement. Likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. Wives, honor your husbands, so that your husbands can honor you, so their prayers be not hindered. As I turn my attention to the wife as a priest in the home, I'm reminded in 1 Peter 2 verse 9, it says, But ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, that ye should show forth the praises of him who hath called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. She's a priest in her home to nurture and to foster spiritual health alongside her husband, who is the chief priest of the home. So we see that the responsibility of spiritual household does not just rest with the husband as much as it does with the wife as well. And 1 Corinthians 7 verse 14 tells us, for the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Else were your children unclean, but now are they holy. I mentioned this in our last message, and I will not reiterate that. But I want us to come to what I consider to be the elephant in the room. Wives are a gift of God to their husbands, to bring them not just honor and success, but the joy of marital intimacy. Yet some wives use the power of their demeanor and their body as a check to deny the husbands of sexual intimacy, as well as their bodies and how they look. But this tells me in 1 Corinthians 7 verse 4, it says, the wife hath not power of her own body, but the husband. And likewise also, the husband hath not power of his own body, but the wife. This is essential in the home, where the wife cannot use this as a check against her husband. The scripture spells it out. Need I say more? I hope not. Yet, the need to deny each other intimacy for a season, for spiritual purposes, is imperative, but must be cautious how often, when, and why, so not to create a wedge between the two that ultimately leads to the risk of infidelity, or worst. I share this passage in 1 Corinthians 7, verse 5. It says, defraud ye not one the other, except it be with consent for a time, that ye may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency. Finally, we know that as a wife nurtures the home, she does so as best as possible for her family, and does not compare her household to the household of another. How she raises her children, to see how great of a job she's doing, or how awesome her motherhood is. However, she must teach her children in the way that they should grow up. The mother is the key to the household. I'm reminded of a time when my wife traveled for 2 weeks overseas. And I was left to play the role of husband, wife, father, mother. 2 weeks felt like 2 months. The juggling, the balancing of the kids and work and everything else. And I said to myself, man, thank God God made women and wives, because I could not reverse the roles of what women do in the home. Try that for 2 days. Wives, switch roles with your husbands for 2 days and let's see how they handle it. Remember, church, his standard is Christ's standard. The woman is nurtured, is the nurturer and the mother of the home. Proverbs 22 verse 6 tells us, train up a child in the way she should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. So I encourage you to watch a video that just shows how the role of a mom is essential to the nurturing of the children in the home.
Mom, what is taking so long?
Oh, honey, I'm sorry.
I don't care if you're sorry. You're wasting my time. Let's go.
Oh my gosh, Martha? Is that you? Hi.
Oh, hey. Oh, I haven't seen you since you moved out of the neighborhood.
Yeah, we fell on some hard times, but we managed. Anyway, how's your son?
Oh, I am so proud of him. He's perfect. He graduated Stanford with honors. He is so successful. Where did your son go to college?
Oh, well, my son didn't go to college.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, after college, my son started his own business. He is doing so well. Does your son have his own business?
Oh no, my son doesn't have his own business. He works for a company.
That's too bad. Well, my son will be here any minute to pick me up and take me to his house in the hills. Where does your son live?
Hey, Mom. Hey. Let me help you with your bags.
Aww.
I'm so sorry to keep you waiting.
Look, baby, you go on ahead and I'll meet you at the car, all right?
Yeah.
I'm going to say goodbye to a friend.
Take your time, Mom.
I'll be right there. You know what? My son didn't go to college because I had gotten sick, and he decided to stay back and take care of me. I begged him to go to school, but he refused to leave my side. And my son didn't start his own business because he works for a nonprofit company. To him, it's not about how much money he makes, but instead about the difference that he can make in other people's lives. And my son, no, he doesn't have a house in the hills. He actually lives with me. After my husband passed, he didn't want to leave me all by myself, so he stayed around to take care of me. My son may not have a college degree, or have started his own business, or even own a fancy house in the hills, but I am proud of the person that he's become.
Mom, what is taking so long?
Oh, honey, I'm sorry.
Look, I don't care if you're sorry. You're wasting my time. Let's go.
At least my son knows how to help his mother. It was nice catching up with you.
All of us know somebody who loves to compare their life to others, to make it seem as if their life is somehow better. They treat life as if it's some sort of...
Church, that is an example of the fact that we cannot compare our homes to another person's home. We have a standard, and that's the Scriptures. And we are led by how God expects us to be. We pray together. We make the best of what God expects us to do in the home. And the wife is central and key to that. We must be prepared to understand that the role of the wife is both unique and vast. Yet firstly, it is a partnership with her husband to succeed and never a lordship over the husband. It is a clear understanding of what the positional authority in the home is, the spiritual obligation for the essential tasks that need to be done in the home. By their own standards or attempt, they cannot succeed together except by the grace of God in the home. I encourage you to work together as wife and husband so you can succeed in the home. God bless you.